Hello, my name is Zisl Slepovitch, and I'm a musician in residence at Yale University's Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies. This video series is designed as a companion to our album Where Is Our Homeland, which is the first volume in the archive's ongoing effort to present songs and poems performed by survivors in testimonies given to the Fortunoff archive over the last 40 years. You can learn more about the project on the archive's website, songsfromtestimonies.org. Where Is Our Homeland? Songs from Testimonies Volume 1 was recorded in 2019 by the Zisl Slepovitch Ensemble featuring renowned singer Sasha Lurje, Craig Udelman on the violin, Joshua Kemp on the accordion, keyboards and guitar, Dmitry Ishchenko on the bass, and myself on woodwinds. The songs in this collection differ vastly in terms of style, social and historical background, language, and many other aspects, but collectively they create a multidimensional picture of Jewish life before and during World War II. Today we'll talk about the song that was written in German, although the name is in Hebrew, Kadima, forward, vorwärts in German, and it was sung by Itzhak S. Itzhak was born in 1915 in Berlin, Germany. He actively participated in Jewish Zionist youth groups and, according to his testimony, established one himself. In the interview given in Hebrew, Itzhak recalls the song allegedly composed by Akiva Levinsky, born in 1918 and died in 2000, a prominent Zionist leader. Here's a short clip from his testimony.
אבל אנחנו גם המנון קבענו לנו, וזה היה שיר אשר חובר על ידי עקיבא לוינסקי, שחי היום בקבוצת מעיין צבי, שהיה אחד ממנהיגי תנועת הנוער שלנו עוד בימים הטובים. הוא מוקדם עלה ארצה. זה שיר אומנם בשפה הגרמנית. השיר אומר, קדימה, נצעד קדימה, אין לנו לאבד זמן. אנחנו יודעים שאיתנו העתיד הטוב. זה בערך הבית הראשון של השיר. הבית האחרון הוא, אנחנו נלחמים בעד כבוד ישראל. אנחנו רוצים דור חדש. ליצור. וזה השיר, והמנגינה כמובן בלתי נשכחת, והמעניין הוא שאבו כאשר הייתה במעצר, בבית סוהר, מספרת לי אחרי כן שהיא זמזמה את המילים, את השיר הזה, וזה חיזק אותה. Kadima, vorwärts, vorwärts im Schritt, wir haben keine Zeit zu verlieren. Wir wissen, wir tragen die Zukunft mit, drum müssen wir vorwärts marschieren. זה הבית הראשון והאחרון. Wir kämpfen für Freiheit, Gleichheit und Recht. Wir kämpfen für Israels Ehre. Wir wollen ein neues, starkes Geschlecht. Wir fordern die jüdische Ehre.
Kadima, vorwärts, forward, is written in the genre of a solemn, probably military march, typical for the anthems and other officially sponsored songs in Europe and the Soviet Union in the 30s. Very few of the ideologically charged songs, be that Zionist, Bundist, or Communist, were musically, idiomatically Jewish. The composers, most of them unknown to us, and the survivors themselves were part of the multi-ethnic, multilingual, and ultimately cosmopolitan milieu in which they grew up.
When Yitzhak refers to this song, he describes it as a hymn, or a hymnon in Hebrew, that was sung by members of his German Jewish youth group when they were in hiding, or when they were living as an underground during the Second World War. But he does acknowledge that it was written earlier, during the Weimar period. So let's talk a little bit about this song and what it tells us about German Zionism during the 1920s and the early 30s. Well, first of all, who wrote it? Yitzhak, in his testimony, attributes it to Akiva Levinsky, who was an important figure in the State of Israel during its first 4 decades. He was a functionary in the Jewish Agency, he was the director of Bank Hapoalim, and he did a lot of other important things. So was he the guy? Well, we do know that, according to his biography, he joined a German Jewish youth group when he was a child, when he was 9, evidently, and that it was called Kadima. Well, Kadima is the name of the song. We also know that he wrote music and poetry as a youth. Evidently, he wrote poems from early childhood. He was also a great aficionado of Hebrew from an early age and was committed to moving to the land of Israel. But there we have a little bit of a problem in that he moved to the land of Israel in 1934 when he was 14 years old. So if he wrote this song, and he might very well have, he did it when he was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. Now, it is a simple song, so it is possible that he wrote it then. And in the testimony, Yitzhak sings it in both Hebrew and in German, and I wonder if it was written in both languages. So we can't be 100% sure that Levinsky wrote it, but I think there's a good chance that he did. He was just a very gifted child. Let me say a few words about the song itself and its broader context. It's a very German song in its cadence, in its music, and in its language. Some of it's a bit disturbing, like the reference to ein neues starkes Geschlecht, a new and strong breed of humanity. But to be fair, that kind of language was used not only in the German world in the 1920s. But what's interesting also is the song doesn't really say anything specific about Jews, or about Judaism, or about Aliyah, or about Eretz Israel. But there is something it refers to twice. It refers to honor, or Ehre, Jüdische Ehre, or the era of Israel, that is, the Jewish people. And that's not a coincidence. The Zionist movement from the very beginning was very concerned with honor. And one doesn't have to look only at German Zionism for this. Lev Pinsker, who was from Odessa, published a famous pamphlet in 1882 called Self-Emancipation, and it was very much about honor, about how the Jews need to honor themselves so they can be honored by the rest of the world. Honor and respect were central in the Zionist writings of Theodor Herzl. So this is a theme that goes back, long before this song was written. And indeed, there were German Zionist hymns of the 19-teens, the turn of the century, and even earlier. Theodor Herzl's favorite Zionist hymn had been written in 1885, but it was quite popular in his own time. And it has language that in some ways is quite different from the song we're looking at, but there's a certain commonality. I want to read just a few lines from this poem. It was called There Where the Cedar, and it begins like this. There where the slender cedar kisses the clouds, and where the Jordan's rapids flow, there where my father's ashes rest, the earth has drunk the blood of Maccabees. Now the reference to Maccabees is important here. Akiva Levinsky, we know that he belonged to a youth group called Kadima, which is the name of this song. Well, that youth group merged with another group called Sofim, or Scouts, and it formed a new group called Young Maccabees. Comparing Jews to Maccabees, to ancient warriors, was found throughout modern Jewish history, but it's particularly powerful in German Zionism. And it goes back to 1914 when the economist and sociologist Franz Oppenheimer wrote an essay called Alte und Neue Maccabeer, Old and New Maccabees. Now let me talk a little bit about the background of German Zionism of the 1920s. On the first tape of the testimony, there's 5 different tapes, but on the first one, Yitzhak refers to himself joining Kadima when he was a child. Now this was an organization that grew out of a more famous German Jewish youth group called Blau-Weiß, or Blue-White, that had been founded in 1912. And it collapsed in 1926. Internal politics and youth groups and often sort of came and went in Weimar Germany. But what happened over time, first in Blau-Weiß and then in Kadima, is that the movement's focus changed. Like the German youth movement as a whole, in the earlier 20th century, the emphasis was on individual cultivation, personal experience with nature, long rambles through the forests, music, and so forth. In Germany and among German Jewish youth as well, as we get further into the 1920s and the early 30s, the youth movements become more nationalistic, and for the Jewish youth movements, a greater emphasis not just on Zionism, but on Aliyah, on immigration to Eretz Israel, and Hachshara, preparation for life in the land of Israel as a laborer, particularly on a kibbutz. Kadima was part of a whole umbrella group of German Jewish youth groups that had about 2,000 young people in all. And I just want to read you a sentence from the founding statement of this umbrella organization, because it really gives you a sense of what German youth groups, German Jewish youth groups were all about. Then you get into the later 20s. We firmly believe that in Palestine the cornerstone for a new society is being laid. We cannot do a thing here except to prepare ourselves to become worthy helpers of the Palestinian workers and to teach the German Jewish youth the ideal of a new and dignified life in Eretz Israel. Note the emphasis not only on labor but also on dignity, which gets us back to honor that I talked about earlier. Now, how we judge the seriousness of these statements really depends on perspective. There were about 2,000 German Jewish youth in these organizations. Hundreds of them did wind up moving to Eretz Israel in the 1920s. About 2,000 German Jews in all moved to Eretz Israel. That might not sound like many, but there were 20,000 German Jews in the Zionistische Vereinigung für Deutschland, the German Zionist organization, and that's actually quite a lot. When we think about the Jewish population of Germany being about 500,000. In the United States, which had 8 times as many Jews, more than 4 million Jews, there were about 60,000 Jews total in the American Zionist organizations. So, 3 times as many as in Germany, but the community was 8 times larger. And also, the American community was about 13,000 members of the American Zionist organization, and the rest were in Hadassah, the Women's Zionist organization. So it was split. Immigration to the land of Israel was low. So actually, German Zionism was much more committed to Eretz Israel than American Zionism, and German Zionism was more popular in Germany than American Zionism was in the United States. And that might be counterintuitive, but I think it's important to keep that in mind. The German Jewish world that gave birth to this song, then, was one where Zionism was pretty prevalent. Not dominant, but prevalent. And within Zionism, there was a serious commitment to immigration, even if not all the time realized in principle. The fact that the song itself doesn't refer to the land of Israel is a bit of a red herring. It may have been written by, again, a very young man, still a boy, whose own thinking was in the process of formation. Or perhaps if it was written by someone else, it was written at a time when the youth movement was undergoing transformations and debates about how important Eretz Israel would be to it. All this to say that we can learn an awful lot from a little song.